Welcome to our deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to explore the world of Aceh.
Aceh.
This sultanate was so powerful. It once controlled the spice trade.
Oh.
And they even called European merchants
Really?
beggars at their doorstep.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we're going to explore the fascinating history of this region before the Aceh War.
Okay.
A time of incredible wealth,
Yeah.
complex power dynamics, and intrigue.
I think it's such a good story because it highlights how a seemingly remote corner of the world could have such a huge impact on global trade.
Yeah. And to guide us, we've got two amazing sources.
Okay.
One is a deep dive into the origins of the Aceh War. The other examines the justifications for it.
Right.
Through different analytical lenses.
That's interesting.
So buckle up. We're going way back to the 11th century.
Wow. All the way back.
Yeah.
So picture this. Arab and Indian traders, they're setting up shop in northwest Sumatra, drawn by the exotic spices, the strategic location.
Right. It all starts with trade.
Yeah.
But this isn't just any trade route.
Right.
It's the Malacca Straits.
Oh, wow.
A vital pathway connecting east and west.
Think of it like the Suez Canal of its time.
Right.
You know, controlling this area meant controlling the flow of spices, silks, and other valuable goods.
Basically the driver's seat of global commerce.
Exactly.
And this is where Aceh comes in.
Okay.
By the late 13th century, Islam takes root. These port kingdoms start flourishing.
Wow.
In fact, even Marco Polo himself stopped by.
Oh, wow. He stopped by on his travels.
Yeah, he did.
So these early kingdoms, they were all about trade, but they were also politically fragmented.
Okay, so each had its own ruler.
Exactly.
Its own interests.
Yeah.
And often its own rivalries.
That's right.
So a bit like ancient Greece, with all those independent city-states, but with a distinctly Southeast Asian flavor.
That's exactly.
I like it.
But then a major turning point occurs.
Oh.
The Portuguese arrive.
When was that?
In the 16th century, looking to monopolize the spice trade.
And how did Aceh react to this new power?
So what's remarkable is that these fragmented Aceh port states, despite their differences, they actually united to expel the Portuguese.
Really? Wow.
It's a real David and Goliath story.
That's incredible. And this victory paves the way for the establishment of the Aceh Sultanate under Sultan Ali Mughal Shah.
It wasn't just a military victory. It was the birth of a powerful, unified force in the region.
So the Sultan became a symbol of Aceh's strength and independence.
Exactly.
Love it.
Yeah.
And Aceh's power continued to grow.
Yeah.
Especially under Sultan Iskandar Muda.
Oh, yeah.
Who reigned from 1607 to 1636.
That's right.
He was known as Young Alexander.
Wow, what a name.
I know, and it's easy to see why. He brought all the major ports under his control.
Okay.
Giving him a virtual monopoly on the pepper trade.
Wow.
Which was in high demand in Europe.
So here we have Aceh.
Yeah.
A sultanate in Sumatra.
Yeah.
Essentially setting the price for one of the world's most sought-after commodities.
I mean, that's incredible.
Absolutely.
Right.
Iskandar Muda understood the power he held. He even called the Europeans the beggars of Europe.
Wow.
Forced to buy pepper at his command.
Talk about a power move.
I know.
But after Iskandar Muda's death in 1636, things started to shift. Right?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
The sources paint a picture of a complex society where power wasn't always concentrated at the top.
So it wasn't just the Sultan calling all the shots?
Not quite.
Okay.
While the Sultan held symbolic importance, the real power brokers were often local chiefs called ule balam.
What exactly were these ule balam?
Think of them like powerful regional lords. They controlled their own territories based largely on family ties.
Wow.
They collected taxes, administered justice, and even maintained their own armies.
Wow. It sounds like they had a lot of autonomy.
They did.
Okay.
It was a system of decentralized power. With each ule balam vying for influence and resources.
So even though Aceh had a sultan, it was also a society with multiple layers of power and influence.
Precisely.
Wow.
And this complex internal structure would have profound implications for Aceh's future.
This has been a fascinating glimpse into the origins of the Aceh Sultanate.
It has.
We've seen how trade, religion, and strategic location all played a role in shaping its destiny.
from humble trading posts to a powerful sultanate controlling the flow of global commerce.
Yeah.
Aceh's story is one of ambition, intrigue, and shifting power dynamics.
Incredible.
Yeah.
We've been talking about the Ule Belong.
Yeah.
And their power within Aceh.
Right.
It makes you wonder, what was the Sultan's role really?
Right.
Was he just a figurehead?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The Sultan's power was definitely limited by these local chiefs, but he wasn't simply a puppet.
Right.
He held symbolic authority as the head of the Sultanate.
Okay.
And that still carried weight.
So it was more of a balancing act.
Exactly.
All right.
The Ule Belong needed the Sultan's recognition to legitimize their own rule.
Right.
They sought his blessing, even though they often held more actual power on the ground.
It's a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah.
It reminds me of medieval Europe, where you had kings and powerful nobles constantly negotiating for power and influence.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
And just like in medieval Europe, there was another key player in Aceh.
Okay.
The
ulama.
Yeah.
The Islamic scholars.
Yes.
We touched on them briefly before.
Right.
What was their role in this complex web of power?
They were incredibly influential. Think of them as the moral compass of Aceh.
Okay.
They interpreted religious law, advised the Sultan, and often challenged the Ule Belong on issues of corruption and injustice.
So they were a check on the power of the local chiefs.
In many ways, yes. They didn't have armies or formal political positions, but their authority stemmed from their religious knowledge and their connection to the people.
Especially the peasantry, right? Our sources mention that the ulama were deeply respected among the rural population.
They served as teachers, judges, and spiritual guides, advocating for the common people against the sometimes exploitative practices of the Ule Belong.
This intricate balance of power between the Sultan, the Ule Belong, and the ulama is fascinating.
I think so.
It seems like Aceh was a society constantly in flux.
It was.
Negotiating between these different centers of influence.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this internal dynamic becomes even more crucial when we consider Aceh's place on the world stage.
Right.
Remember, this is a time of intense colonial rivalry. And Aceh, with its strategic location in the Malacca Straits, was right in the thick of it.
The Malacca Straits.
Yes.
That vital trade route everyone wanted to control.
It was.
What was Aceh's relationship like with the European powers before the Dutch came knocking?
It was a mixed bag.
Okay.
On the one hand, Aceh was recognized as an independent sultanate. The 1824 London Treaty between the Dutch and the British actually guaranteed its independence.
Wait, so the Dutch were initially bound by treaty?
Yes.
To protect Aceh's independence?
That's right.
That seems a bit ironic.
It is.
Yeah.
But the treaty also obligated the Dutch to protect international shipping.
Right.
Which brought them into conflict with Aceh's, shall we say, more entrepreneurial side.
You're talking about piracy, right? Our sources paint a pretty vivid picture.
They do.
Of Aceh as a haven for pirates.
It was a real issue.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a few rogue ships. Piracy was often sanctioned and even profited from the Ule Belong.
So even though the Sultan was technically the head of state, he couldn't really control these local chiefs and their piratical activity.
Precisely. He lacked the power to enforce his will on them, especially those further away from the capital.
Right.
This created a real problem for the Dutch.
Yeah.
They couldn't directly intervene in Aceh's internal affairs because of the treaty, but they were under pressure to do something about the piracy.
It sounds like they were caught between a rock and a hard place.
They were.
Yeah.
And things only got more complicated with the opening of the Suez Canal in 1869.
The Suez Canal.
Yes.
That changed everything for global trade, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah.
The Malacca Straits suddenly became even more crucial as the main shipping route between Europe and Asia.
Yeah.
And Aceh, sitting right in the middle of it all, became a much more tempting target for the Dutch.
So we've got the Dutch wanting to expand their control.
Yes.
Aceh struggling with internal power dynamics and a piracy problem.
Right.
Yeah. And the opening of the Suez Canal throwing fuel on the fire.
Exactly.
Wow.
It was a recipe for conflict.
Yeah.
The question is,
what happened next?
That's what we'll uncover in our next episode.
Okay.
As we dive into the events that led to the eruption of the Aceh War.
We left off with the Dutch facing the dilemma. They were bound by treaty to protect Aceh's independence, but also pressured to secure the Malacca Straits, which meant dealing with Aceh's piracy problem.
That's right.
It sounds like a tricky situation.
It absolutely was. And remember, the Suez Canal had just opened, making the Malacca Straits even more crucial for global trade. Aceh's strategic importance was suddenly amplified.
So what did the Dutch do?
Well,
did they just ignore the treaty and invade?
Not quite.
Okay.
They were savvy about it.
Okay.
They saw an opportunity in Aceh's internal divisions, especially the Sultan's limited control over the Ulebelang, who were often behind the piracy.
So they used that to their advantage.
Exactly. They started by negotiating with individual Ulebelang, offering them deals and protection in exchange for their loyalty.
Classic divide and conquer.
It was a classic divide and conquer strategy.
And how did the Sultan react to this?
He was in a tough spot. He realized the Dutch were slowly chipping away at Aceh's independence, but he lacked the power to stop them directly.
It's almost like watching a game of chess. With the Dutch making calculated moves to outmaneuver the Sultan.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
And the Sultan, realizing he was losing the game, made a desperate move.
He attempted to submit.
To who?
To the Ottoman Sultan.
Wow.
Hoping for protection against the Dutch.
The Ottomans.
Yeah.
That's a long way from Sumatra.
It is.
What were the chances of that working?
Slim to none, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The Ottomans were facing their own internal and external challenges at the time.
Right.
And couldn't afford to get entangled in a conflict with the Dutch.
So the Sultan's gamble failed.
It did.
What happened next?
Well, the Dutch saw their opportunity. With the Sultan weakened. And the Ulebelang divided. They went back to the British. And renegotiated the 1824 treaty.
And I'm guessing the British were more receptive this time around.
They were. The strategic landscape had shifted. And the British were less concerned about upsetting the balance of power in Southeast Asia. The 1871 Sumatra Treaty essentially gave the Dutch a green light to intervene in Aceh.
So after years of maneuvering and strategizing, the Dutch had finally achieved their goal.
Removing the legal obstacles to their expansion into Aceh.
It was a pivotal moment. The stage was now set for a conflict that would change the course of Aceh's history.
This has been a fascinating exploration of Aceh's history before the storm.
It has.
From bustling trading ports to a powerful sultanate caught in the web of colonial intrigue. It's a story that highlights the complex interplay of trade power and global ambitions.
It's a reminder that even societies with rich histories and strong traditions can be vulnerable to external pressures, especially when internal divisions make them susceptible to outside manipulation.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Aceh.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We've seen how its strategic location, internal power dynamics, and the changing global landscape all contributed to the events that would ultimately lead to the Aceh War.
That's right.
Until next time.